The memory locations where we store data while our programs run are called variables. Keep in mind, we're not talking about saving something on your computer so that it's there the next time you turn it on. This is just the information our program needs and uses while it's executing, and it's gone once the program stops running. When I'm teaching in person, I tend to use a cup as my visual aid for a variable. A variable can hold one piece of information, so if I want to store someone's name, that's one variable. Storing their height would mean a second variable, and storing their age would be a third. Eventually, we'll learn how to store groups of data, but for now, it's one variable for each thing we want to keep track of. To create a variable in a program, we use a variable declaration statement, which has two parts, a data type and an identifier. We'll take the second part first and talk about identifiers. An identifier is the name we use to refer to a variable. Identifier is the proper term, but programmers tend to just call it the variable's name. C# really doesn't care what name or identifier we give to a variable, as long as it follows a few basic rules. It has to start with a letter or an underscore. It can have numbers, but not at the start, and it can't have any other symbols, including spaces. Oh, and for now, you can't use the same name twice, but there will be some exceptions, so we don't really count that as a rule for now. Those three rules are all that C# cares about, but the humans who look at your code have some expectations about identifiers. Different programming languages have different conventions. A convention is not really a rule, it's something people agree to do, like hitting skip if a Nickelback song comes on.
No!
One C# convention is to name variables using a style called camel case, because we're not allowed to use spaces. A variable name should start with a lowercase letter, then capitalize the start of each new word. Those capital letters make names with multiple words easier to read. You might have experience with a programming language that uses a different convention. For example, Python variable names are written in what we call snake case, where all the letters are lowercase and words are separated by underscores. That's a fine naming convention, but it's not what we use here. Those naming conventions become a habit, and whatever you're used to will always look better, but you'll need to force yourself to use camel case in C#, otherwise all the other C# reindeer will laugh and call you names. And you'll lose points on your assignments if you don't use camel case, which I guess is more important. Naming conventions exist for a reason, and those conventions are expected in industry, so you'll need to follow them here too. In addition to using camel case, the other naming convention you need to follow is using descriptive identifiers. The name of a variable should describe what it contains or what purpose it serves in your code. Like labeling a box with all the junk you're going to put in it before you take it out to the garage and stick it on the shelf. Other people who come along need to be able to tell what's in there. Naming a variable email address is descriptive. Naming the variable e is not descriptive. When we look at code, we value the quality of readability. Is it easy for us to understand what the code does? Most coding conventions are ultimately about improving readability. Using single-letter identifiers, for example, or abbreviating words too much can make code confusing to understand. In addition to an identifier, the other piece we need in order to declare a variable is a data type. As the name suggests, the data type establishes what type of information the variable will store. For example, if we want to store a whole number, we can use the int data type, which gets its name from the math term integer. For numbers with decimals, we can use double, which is what we call a floating point data type. And when we need to store letters and words, we can use string. There are other data types you need to be aware of, but most of the variables we'll create as beginners will be one of those three, so I'll leave the others for you to read about. The format of our variable declaration is the data type first and then the identifier. And like other C# statements, we have to remember to end with a semicolon. C# uses this declaration to reserve or allocate a chunk of memory based on the data type, and then connects that location to our identifier so we can easily refer to it. Basically, it gives us a cup with a label. Here's an example of a program that declares three variables. Since a person's age is generally a whole number, we'll use an int for that. For height, we're going to use a double. In this program, we're thinking of height as being in inches. And finally, we have a variable for a name, and that's a string since it's a collection of characters. When I try to refer to these variables in write-line statements, I get a compiler error. Remember that declaring variables only reserves space in memory. We still need to put values into those cups. But before we do that, I want to point out that string is a little different from int and double. That's because a string is an object, as in the first O in object-oriented programming. We'll learn about that down the road. We might also call it a reference data type. We might also call the string a reference data type, whereas the numeric ones are called value data types. A value type stores, well, a value, but a reference type actually stores a reference to another location in memory, actually in a different part of your computer's memory altogether. We're not quite ready for all of that, but we need to know that these memory locations have something in them. And to put something in them, we'll use an assignment statement. An assignment statement uses a single equals symbol. And I'm saying that deliberately because we can use the equal signs in combination with other things for something else entirely. But forever and ever, when you see a single equal sign in C#, that's an assignment statement. And the job of an assignment statement is to put a value into a variable. So we put the identifier on the left side of the equals and the value we want to store on the right. If we add assignment statements to our code, we can see that these assigned values are what get output, because the computer goes out to that memory location and retrieves what's there. And notice once again that the string variable is a little different. String values have quotation marks. That's how C# knows where the string starts and ends, since it might include symbols and words that are similar to C# statements. Order counts here. If I put the assignment statements after the write-line statements, I still get that compiler error. The compiler looks at your code one line at a time. Most of the variables we declare are going to need a value assigned to them right away. So C# lets us combine the declaration and assignment statements into one line of code. We're going to declare our variable the same way, but then stick the assignment on before the semicolon. This is really useful and is probably how you'll do a lot of your declarations. Okay, so we've got our cup and we've put something in it. What happens if we want to change what's in the cup? After all, it's called a variable because the contents can change or vary. We can assign a new value to a variable even if it already has an existing value. Whatever was in it before is gone forever, and it just has the new value. Being able to change the value does lead to one common mistake for beginners. When beginners try to assign a new value to a variable they've already created, they often put the data type first. But putting the data type first is telling C# that you want to make a new variable of that data type, and since you can't make a second variable with the same name, this code won't compile. Once you've made a variable, you only need an assignment statement, not a combined declaration and assignment. And it's easy to get confused when you get used to typing the combination. Variables are going to bring our programs to life so they can do more than simple output. We're only beginning to see what we can do with them, but declaration and assignment statements really are going to be the foundation for pretty much anything you learn going forward.